Teresa was one of a kind. She was honest, she was loyal, she was brilliant, and she was genuine.
Terry would look at me deeply. She would absolutely pierce me. And I would say, we'd be going up the steps of the ESC, and there she'd be, and I'd say, "Hey Terry, how are you?" And she'd stop and she'd say, "I'm good, but how are you?" And with Terry, I never gave "I'm good." I mean, poor Terry. It was like, well, let me tell you. Let me tell you how things are going. Because I truly felt she wanted to know, how are you?
The day I met her, I knew there was something very special about her. It was the 2000-2001 school year. I was a new substitute, sitting in the lunchroom, and there was Terry, wearing a red skirt with a native print on it, and dangly earrings hanging past her short, wavy black hair. Something transpired between us, a mental connection where I felt her energy, and I thought, I get you. You and I have a lot in common.
Teresa, Jill, and I grew up just blocks from each other in Littleton, Colorado. So we've been friends since 4th grade. She's Teresa to us, she's Terry to all of you. I say friends, but we really were more like sisters, and even better than sisters, because we chose each other. We were young girls together, teenagers together, students together, brides together, grown women together, and even teachers together. And it never occurred to any of us, not even for a second, that we would not be old women together.
When the sympathy cards poured in, the same words appeared over and over from people. Terry was a bright light. Terry had such a bubbly personality. Terry was a great friend and colleague. Terry was a kind, positive, and vibrant person. I remember she was always laughing and always made me laugh. I loved her for that.
She displayed a very positive disposition, beautiful demeanor, and that beautiful Terry Ellingson smile. We witnessed her being an athlete, a mathematician, a biologist, a great educator, a very loyal friend. Very loyal friend.
When I was placed at Montalvo in Terry's 4th grade class, the birds sang extra happy that day. There was laughter every day we worked together. She taught me the art of always keeping a positive spin on things, and to do the unexpected to keep things interesting.
Being in my grandparents' backyard, and I was super into gymnastics at the time, and I really wanted her to do a handstand for me, but she was in a dress, but that didn't matter to her, so she did a handstand right up against a tree, and there goes her dress, and she still has shorts on under her dress at the age of 40, probably like a little girl, but still prepared for anything at the time. And another thing, I don't know if you've ever thought of it was a TV show, I think it was called Xena, the Princess Warrior, and she made a really obnoxious yodeling sound. And I know that was one thing I'd always make TT do for me, is this really obnoxious, yelling sound as loud as possible. And that's just one of the few memories I can think of for my Aunt TT.
Her husband Dave said, whenever we would go out to dinner, she would usually order her dessert first, because she wanted to make sure she had room for it.
I have a million Teresa stories, as one does. Backflips down the hallway of Leawood Elementary School with a cast on her ankle, just because somebody told her she couldn't.
She had a wicked sense of humor. Smart. I remember one day talking with her about perhaps, you need to be an administrator. You have all those great interpersonal skills, you have that content knowledge, you're a natural born leader. She's, oh no, Michelle, And I realized then she's too smart for the gig.
When we think about all of you who were colleagues of Terry's, if that's who she was to you, it was because she shared everything she knew and everything she had. She shared her knowledge, she shared her expertise, she shared her enthusiasm. for her colleagues. Everyone around her was a very, very special person.
Terry just had that knack, and I married Paul, and Paul was always cooking dinners, and she was so happy that Paul was there and could answer her bird questions and her geology questions. But Terry always had a knack that as soon as Paul and I sat down for dinner, there'd be a knock at the door, and it would be Terry. And she said, "Oh, I didn't know you guys were eating." Well, I work in Santa Barbara, Paul works, and we pretty much eat the same time every night. And Paul would get up and say, "There's a plate for you," and we'd make room for Terry.
And the verb that comes to mind when I think of Terry, from that moment I met her until the last time I got to see her, was bop. Terry bopped. You know, she didn't walk, she bopped. Everywhere she went, she was bopping. Bopping from her student to student, bopping around the district office. And I tell you, when someone is around you who is bopping, it inspires the rest of us to just bop a little bit.
Dave said his favorite things about her were her smile and sense of humor, the way she loved everyone. She didn't have a prejudiced bone in her body. She was always so happy. Dave said she had me laughing sometimes so much that I couldn't breathe. She could be really upset about something and then find a way to laugh at it. She always turned a negative thing into a positive and a laugh. Her friend Annie told me she was definitely the leader. She would always be the one who was always ahead, the one to keep up with and not to slow down. She lived life full tilt.
And I had never met a woman who was so wild and so colorful and just independent. And I specifically remember my 8-year-old self watching her and being so enamored by this person who was so thirsty for life, and she lived so fiercely every day of her life. You met her and she just wove herself into you and showed you new things and made you try new things and be a new person. And I will miss her so much for that.
I can't think of anybody who lived a more full, complete, and enjoyable life than Terry Ellingson. And opposites attract. You got the gruff guy and the unbelievable, sensitive, mild-mannered girl, but they're not weak. Never confuse niceness with weakness, because they're just tough. And she's as tough as Dave, and I think Dave would admit that he softened off some of his rougher edges.
At their wedding in Malibu, when it was time for the bride and groom to feed each other cake, it started out as a very simple thing, where Dave put some icing on his little finger, but then Terry got that little gleam in her eye and grabbed a whole handful of cake, which she smashed in Dave's face. He retaliated. She had white icing all over her face, and Dave had a strawberry on his forehead. But she was laughing and smiling, her big-hearted smile that everyone knows. A laugh forever, caught on camera.
Every time Terry and I would meet, every single time, I say it was 7 years, every time we'd meet, she'd leave a little token of our meeting in my office. Whether it was her keys, it was a cup, a stack of papers, a little rim that Miss Ellingson was in my office.
Terry was cool. She drove a truck and a motorcycle. She biked 50 miles on the weekend. She swam around the pier. She was so athletic.
We started doing adventure racing, and I have lots of stories of what it was like to be racing with Terry. As you probably know, she was very motion sickness. All of our events involved some type of water activity, and so Terry would have to be in a kayak, and she would take her medicine. Kim and I would be in one kayak, and Terry would be behind us, and Terry would just keep paddling, but be throwing up the whole time. And we would stop and say, "Come on, Terry." She goes, no, I'll finish." And so we would tie a rope to her boat, and we would paddle and pull her, and we would just be trying not to laugh, and just like listening to her behind us because she made a lot of noise.
And periodically, she would come into my office as the superintendent, unannounced, uninvited. She'd pop in, and she'd say, "I just came to stop by and say, how are you?" And then I'd say, "Oh, do you have 10 minutes? Sit down." And she'd listen to how I really was. And when she'd walk away, I'd think, what a friend. What a good friend.
Hour-long conversations about how great and powerful the F word was. Motorcycle rides up the canyon. She the new driver and me the naive passenger. Just because she loved the freedom of it. I could go on and on, but my point is that we all have these stories that connect us to Teresa. They may look, sound, or end differently, but at their core, they're the same. They all show her curiosity and passion for life, her love of family and friends.
The other thing about Terry is that she was a teacher for such a long time, and teachers have such an enormous impact. They touch so many lives, have so much influence on people.
One day, she challenged her students and said that if they could all accomplish a goal, that she would do a back handspring. They did, and she did. Well, I clasped my hand over my mouth in complete surprise.
Teachers liked to be experts, and to be placed in a new environment where you're not so expert, you're the newbie, can be tough. And when you have someone like Terry, who is there for you, to support you, to be kind, to be generous, who'll answer all of your questions, be patient about showing you where you get your materials, and that you don't have to wait for the bell to go to the bathroom. Those things are comforting when you're moving into a new place.
She loved teaching. It was especially important to her to instill in her students a love of math and science, particularly environmental science. She worked hard to secure grants and to find funding to take her students to the Channel Islands National Marine Sanctuary to teach them about research and how to monitor and collect data. She even traveled to Washington, D.C. and appeared before the Senate subcommittee with Lois Katz to speak about the importance of a federal grant given through the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration.
All of the things, I remember people coming into the classroom and talking to us about the watershed and having all of these activities and going on to the Channel Islands. That was one of the best trips. And going to the outdoor education, I remember all that, and I didn't realize until I was sitting here today how much work she put into that. I mean, I saw from my end, but I didn't really know outside of that just how much extra she worked for us. So I just really like to say thank you to her and everything that she did for us.
I have a letter from a student who is in Terry's class, and he's overseas, and he wishes that he could be here today. My name is Matt, and I'm in the military, and I'm currently deployed overseas. I heard what happened to Ms. Ellingson. She always told me that I looked like one of her nephews, and always told me to get my hair blonde so I could be identical to him. I never saw her nephews before, so I don't know if she was really being serious.
Terry's students loved her. She kept every letter and note that they ever wrote to her. Some of the ones that I found said, "Dear Mrs. Ellingson, you are the greatest teacher I've ever had. You are the greatest teacher because you helped me when I came back from the hospital and I was behind. I will never forget you. I will visit you when I become president."
When parents were reticent about seeing their kids off for a week to some strange place because we said it was the right thing, she personally took time with each student and their parents to tell them that this is going to be a good thing. And you know what? She was there that week to make sure it was a good thing. And I remember many conversations with Dave because when we arrived at camp, they weren't allowed to call the school or let us know. But they could make one phone call, so she would always call Dave, and I'd call Dave right away. "Okay, did they arrive?" Okay, they're over there, da-da-da-da-da, and I would be on the phone. He said, Michelle, they're fine. I said, Terry's with them? They're fine. I mean, she just, whatever it took.
There are teachers, and then there are teachers. She was something special in that classroom as a teacher in our district. And I would also take that to the next level and say, there are friends, and then there are friends. And that's who Terry was. She was the and then there are person.
Although Terry couldn't contribute navigationally to us, if you know Terry, she never knew where she was. She would repeatedly say, well, which way is the ocean? Terry, it's that. Where's the west? But what she brought with us was her strength. She was incredibly strong. Her bilingual abilities, her friendship, and most importantly, her humor. The other three of us are very serious, trying to be competitive, and Terry always brought the laughter. When we did repeated races a few years in a row, they would say, oh, that's that team from Ventura. And they would know us because of Terry's colorful language that would come out during some of our races.
What do you gotta do? We gotta run out and get
She loved to watch the hummingbirds around her house. She loved birds. All birds fascinated her with their graceful flight. She once told me she would be a bird if she could be any animal, because they get to soar far and see wide.
If you could sit down right now and list every attribute you would want in a wife, just make a list. Check every one of them for Terry. She was just great. And I love Dave. And I love Terry. I'm going to miss her a lot.
Recently, my daughter Julie, now 5, and I were walking along the Botanical Gardens and talking about Terry. Terry often hiked the trail with Julie and I. We came upon a spot on the path where the rains had washed out the dirt and all the rocks on the trail were exposed more than usual. I told Julie, each rock is different, just like each person is different. That is what makes us special. There were hundreds of little rocks near our feet, and Julie bends down and finds the brightest blue metamorphic rock, a rock that I would more likely find in Colorado and not on a California trail. Julie says, "This rock is Terry. It's the most special."
The one thing Terry always would say in the middle, we did 12-hour races, 18-hour races, would say, "Can't we just one time go take a weekend and go to a spa?" and we have a race coming up April 1st. My sister kept thinking of we have to do a race name that would honor Terry. And so the last one that my sister came up with was Tits. And this is Terry's Spa. So we're toying with wearing shirts that say Tits.
Last summer, Teresa and I had many conversations about the meaning of it all. And I read to her from Desert Dorada. She was rather taken by its message, so I thought I would share it with you all today. Go placidly among the noise and haste, and remember what peace there may be in silence. As far as possible, without surrender, be on good terms with all persons. Take kindly to the counsel of years, gracefully surrendering the things of youth. Nurture strength of spirit to shield you in sudden misfortune. But do not distress yourself with dark imaginings. Many fears are born of fatigue and loneliness. Beyond a wholesome discipline, be gentle with yourself. You are a child of the universe, no less than the trees and the stars. You have a right to be here.
I try to leave before 6:30 if I can nowadays, because I can hear Terry saying, "Family first, Marie Faye, family first." Our time was short together, but she left me with some really amazing gifts. watching her through her sickness and being with her that last week really showed me and reminded me that you cannot take life for granted. Every day is a gift.
And whether or not it is clear to you, no doubt the universe is unfolding as it should. Therefore, be at peace with God, whoever you conceive him to be. And whatever your labors and aspirations, in the noisy confusion of life, keep peace in your soul.
And the one thing I loved about Terry is even as sick as she was, we would be able to laugh. She really showed me the courage of facing life's challenges, and you did it with a smile, no matter how sucky it got. And you just kept moving forward. And if you could laugh a little bit that day, then it was a good day.
Teresa has left an indelible mark on my soul. She's woven tightly into the tapestry of my life. And I am so grateful for each and every memory. Sorry, this is a celebration. And I'm blessed that God chose us to be friends.
With all its sham, drudgery, and broken dreams, it is still a beautiful world. Be cheerful, strive to be happy.
Elizabeth Kubler-Ross says, "The reality is that you will grieve forever. You will not get over the loss of a loved one. You will learn to live with it. You will heal and you will rebuild yourself around the loss that you have suffered. You will be whole again, but you will never be the same again. Nor should you be the same, nor should you want to." The lessons that we can take from Terry's life is to laugh, smile, turn negatives into positives, and eat your dessert first.